On this episode, we feature a person who was diagnosed with cancer. He overcame the diagnosis and now helps people find clarity, get unstuck, and find better health and purpose in their life. Musical artist and life coach, I'd like to welcome Kevin Roth to the show. How you doing, Kevin?
I'm good. How you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Awesome, man. Thank you, for taking the time to do this. I know you got a lot going on, and we talked a little bit off air, kind of about, maybe some of the things we're going to talk about. And I guess we can maybe get started with just, can you maybe tell us who Kevin Roth was as a person prior to your diagnosis with cancer?
I professionally been a musician. I have about 50 albums out. You could find me on iTunes or Amazon. I had a folk music career with the dulcimer, and then I got into children's family music and sang the theme to the hit PBS show Shining Time Station. I was born musical and also born kind of spiritually searching. One of the interesting things is that I think it was around the age of 8, although I don't remember exactly. I had the beginnings of out of body experiences. So, what I mean by that is I didn't feel like I was in my body or out of my body, but it was almost like could feel the future, see the future. And at one of those moments, I saw three phases of my life. The first phase was that my young years would be difficult, which they were. And the second phase was that I would continue to have a difficult life, but professionally successful, which I did. And the third was that I would understand things spiritually, understand the true purpose of what I was doing and why, and show that to others, which I had no clue what that was. But that has begun to happen in strange and interesting ways. So everything I saw, you could call it psychic, out of body, all happened. My life rambled along thinking that fame and fortune and love and all that stuff was going to bring happiness or be the answer to happiness, and it wasn't. I got kind of rich and famous, and that wasn't it. I fell in love, and that was it for about 6 months, and then the honeymoon ended. Um, but I, like most people, have always been searching for that sense of home, but not knowing what it was or where it was. But I felt like it was some sort of a substratum kind of hovering over me or looking after me. And I didn't feel like being on the planet was my place, and I wanted to get home. Being here was like being thrown into a summer camp I didn't ask to go to. So then
Just
that
real quick, sorry to interrupt, but I can totally identify with what you're saying there as far as not feeling at home or feeling like you maybe belong here. Um, it's strange. Do you still feel that way today?
Oh yeah, but I know what it is.
Yeah, yeah,
So we're already home because who we are and what we are
yeah.
isn't any different from anything else.
Okay, you can continue on. I just thought that was, yeah, that was cool.
Well, I made a YouTube video a year ago on my out of body experience. It had about 400 some views. And 3 weeks ago, YouTube picked it up and made it viral. There's been over 65,000 views. And I made some other videos subsequently. And I can tell you, I had over 300 comments, and there is no lack of people that feel the way you feel and I feel and your listeners feel. Something's going on, and this ain't it, as they say. This is the dream, But we'll get into that in a minute. But anyway, after all that happened in 2015, I kind of had an existential crisis, and I moved to Kansas from Florida. And while I was in Kansas on a routine dermatology appointment, I had this dermatologist, and he was weird because he was a nice guy, but I noticed a little tiny statue of Buddha on his shelf, which is like something you don't usually see in a doctor's office. And he said, I don't like that little freckle on your nose. And he sent me to a doctor who did a biopsy, and then they came back and they said, well, it's not cancer, it's not melanoma, it's something called in situ, and they removed it. Then a couple months later, there was a lump under my chin, and then I knew the shit had hit the fan. And then they took out the lymph node and said it was cancerous, and your nose was cancerous, and it. So you had stage 3 melanoma. There's no cure. There's a 70% chance it'll come back in a year, and you'll be dead within 3. So that was the life-altering switch. I can laugh about it now because it never came back. Um, and that was so from 2016 till now, I've been cancer free, but I've been writing a book, and I've just writing about that time period and all the crazy things that happened uh, about that. So I ended up being a life coach. I was sitting in the car one day at a stoplight, and I thought, how did you survive 70% chance of dying? And what came to me was, you survived it to teach people what you've learned and what you're continuing to learn. So I became a life coach. I still play the dulcimer and teach dulci meditation and all of that. And here we are.
So that that's fascinating. So obviously that was I guess a key point into kind of shifting you into what you do now. Can you maybe take us back to like maybe the additional like diagnosis when you realize that you have a 70% chance of dying? Uh, what kind of emotions? What was your thought process maybe initially? Like, was there a lot of fear there? What were you going through?
Well, I had had another out of body premonition experience in Florida that had told me I was going to have a serious illness, but that I'd be okay. So when you're told that you've got cancer, you feel a total lack of control. And you're put into a system that's multi-billion dollars. So I rejected a lot of oncologists I saw. I stuck to my gut and went with the one that I wanted, which was a very strange story because he wasn't taking new patients. I ended up with another doctor in his office, not knowing that it was his office too. And I got my test results back because they wanted to know if the cancer had spread anywhere else. So I needed to have a doctor schedule an MRI and a CAT scan. So I went with her. When I went in to get the results, she told me that the cancer had not spread anywhere, but that I needed what's called a lymphectomy, meaning taking out my lymph nodes. And I said, well, if there isn't cancer, why would you want to do that? And she said, well, it's protocol. And I said, my name isn't protocol. And I stormed out of her office. And on my way out, I saw the doctor I wanted, his business card on the desk, and I insisted to see him. And the next day, I saw him, and he was the only oncologist that agreed with me, do nothing. Let's wait and see what happens. There's no cure, and we'll guide you. All the other oncologists wanted to pump me full of medical shit and treated me with kindness, but it was like, hey, buddy, I see guys like you every day, 5 days a week.
Right. This is the procedure. Here's how we're going to do this.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't go for that. But it also sent me into a really big spiritual nosedive. I mean, there are a lot of crazy stories I could tell you. I'll tell you one. I was all bandaged up from the operation, and I was watching Netflix, and I saw a documentary movie on a guy named Yogananda, who was an Indian guru. I'd heard Steve Apples used to read his book. And something my gut told me to watch it. So I watched it, and it was very interesting. It was about something called self-realization. And then something said, you should look for one of his fellowship or churches. And I'm thinking, well, there's none in Kansas, but I knew there was some from the movie in California. But my instinct said, keep looking. And I went to his website and I Googled his locations, and there was one a quarter of a mile from my apartment. I'd driven by it every day,
Wow.
gym, but it didn't have a sign. So I went in, and I didn't know what they were talking, but they do a lot of chanting in their services. But I felt like a great big weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I began to look at his work, which is beautiful. He wasn't my guru, he wasn't my spiritual teacher, but he was the entrance way for me to Google more about self realization, which is where I found who I consider my spiritual teacher, a guy named Ramana Maharshi. Me and about 16 million other people. But, but that's just one of the stories that happened. So it wasn't just cancer, it was a whole mystical experience. But to answer your question more fully, is when I got the cancer and I knew I was probably going to die, I had an epiphany. And the epiphany is what matters to you, why, and what are you going to do with your life if you only have a couple years left? And the answer was get the hell out of Kansas, go someplace like San Diego, which is beautiful, and live the life you want, which for me is a writer and a bohemian musician and a dog lover. I couldn't afford it, but I changed the story in my head to like, you're going to do this. And I did. And I'm here and I'm thriving.
That says a lot, I think, about one's ability to kind of not only like self-motivate, but also perhaps alter their future or kind of write their own story, just through thought and determination, I guess you will.
That's what I teach people to do. I teach them what I did.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's brilliant. There's a lot of people doing that kind of work, and I've had a couple people on my show that are doctors that were like that. And well, one that I always talk about on my show, my guests are probably tired of hearing me talk about it, but Joe Dispenza, people like that who, I don't know, I just think they're onto something perhaps. And I think it's more of where I just wish, I guess maybe because there's not as much money involved, and you ain't got big pharma's pocketbook, but I just wish there was more of a push for that. And maybe there is, and I just don't know it, but I don't know. It's just something more natural about it.
Well, I think when the teacher is ready, or when the student is ready, the teacher shows up. So I think when you're ready, you'll find your place with it.
Can you maybe, well, I guess let me hold that thought. I want to ask you about these out of body experiences. Now, do these happen often to you?
I think they do. Uh, I don't know how to describe them because everybody has a different kind.
Hmm.
Some people say, "Oh, it's not an out of body, Kevin. It's just that you're psychic." But I don't think that that's it. Because when I have these experiences, I feel them like like they're already happening. I project. It's sort of a projection in a sense, um, but I don't feel in my body or anywhere. I just feel in the experience. That's the best way to put it. And it can happen at any time when I'm driving. It's a lot like dreaming, actually. It's a lot like dreaming.
So this isn't just like through meditation or in your sleep. This is something that can happen anytime, anywhere to you.
Oh yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool.
Like deja vu is sort of like an out of body experience.
Yeah, yeah. Huh. That's interesting. And I wonder if now you might be tapping into something maybe better than others can do, but I just wonder if other people have similar experiences or something like that, and they just kind of chalk it off, or they're not as aware of it as maybe you are. Like you're aware and you're picking up on that I'm having this experience and that I'm
Yeah,
feeling these feelings. And
yeah. I teach mindful awareness, so I'm always in touch with this stuff. What happens is everybody is born with that longing for the sense of home, God, consciousness. Buddha, Jesus, whatever you want to call it. But as we get older, it gets covered up by I have got to make a living, I want to get married, I want to have some money, all this kind of stuff. And we buy things to fill in the hole in our soul. So some do it with drugs, alcohol, overeating. Some do it with, if they have a lot of money, uh, they'll buy trips. They'll do anything but to sit with themselves and to really go deep. So it's not an easy process, but when, I say there's nothing like a death sentence to wake you up. So my search for how do I get back to that longing and what is it was really taught to me from, and it's continuing because this lesson from Ramana Maharshi and what he talks to non-duality and something called a jhana. But I think everyone's looking for it. And they have experiences, but they shove them off because what seems unreal is real. And what seems real is really unreal. So, you can chalk that off to spiritual woo-woo stuff, or you could look at quantum physics that says the same thing that the ancient masters said. There's no there. We're walking around in bodies that are 99 point, I don't know, 9999 empty. So what is going on? Is anything going on? What is it? So in the book I'm writing, it's interesting because I have to start out, the book originated because people wanted me to write about my music career. And after I tried a couple times, I thought I have just no interest in writing about my music career. I have interest in writing about what has meaning to me. And so I started to write this book, but I couldn't jump into the metaphysics of things because it turns people off. So there's the dream world that we live in and we act in and, we have to deal with in the dream. So that's what I talk about. And then I gradually lead people in the book to the idea of quantum physics, spirituality, non-duality, the spiritual path, because I get tons of emails from people asking me how to find their own path or that the path they're on they're unhappy with. So that's the other thing that I teach, and I totally get it, but when you realize that this is just a dream, it takes the pressure off.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. Now, I think you asked an important question of, what is really going on if this is not real. And I'm going to ask you, what is your belief is going on? Is it consciousness just having a reflection of itself to better understand itself? Or is it just some kind of matrix world that we're experiencing to have, I guess, experiences and to have the light and dark, the pain and suffering, the love, that dual effect of opposites?
I've come to believe that there's one reality, and that is not definable. It has no form, shape, or anything, and yet, in some sort of way, it is everything. So we are dreamers having the dream. We're the dreamers in the dream having the dream. What makes the dream arise in our mind, which also doesn't exist, you can't hold anything called a mind in your hand, it's all consciousness, and then we're back to what is it, right? No one will ever know. What happens is the ego and the mind, they say, rises, and then the story, the dream begins and takes over the reality. But there is no ego. There's no mind. If you said, well, your ego is the problem, I'd say, okay, well, bring me the ego, let me talk to it. You can't bring an ego. There's no ego. There's no mind. So what exists is only that one reality. So the question is then, what are we experiencing? So what we are apparently experiencing is really just a dream. There's no birth, there's no death, there's no nothing. So that may sound crazy, maybe not to your audience because your audience is down on the, but I mean, just look at the cosmos. There's no there there. They say the universe is expanding into what? You know? So you choose, I choose, and my clients I work with choose, at least I hope they choose, that instead of getting caught up that you're in a bank line that's driving you crazy because someone's asking what you think is a stupid question, you think, this is just a dream. This is crazy. And you no longer are impatient. You just kind of watch it like a movie. That's what happened to me today. I was like trying to get some information and I was like, oh my God. Life, so whatever this is, let's call it consciousness, it doesn't have a name, is like the movie screen. We walk into the theater, the lights go down, and we see the Titanic, right? And the girl's crying next to you, and you're feeling like, oh shit, the kid's gone down in water, and you go through all this experience, and your blood pressure goes up, and you're all caught up in the movie. You have no idea that you're watching a screen because you're caught up in the movie. The movie ends, you leave the theater happy, upset, moved, whatever it is. You walk out, and what remains is the screen. That's what it is.
I like that analogy. That's pretty interesting. Um, can you then maybe talk about the importance of understanding spirituality for people that are struggling or people that you're working with to try to get over things?
Yeah, I'm super glad you asked that because I just finished a chapter on that just today. So, spirituality is really, they say that we're spiritual beings having a human experience, right? That's the thing that people talk about. A lot of people reject religion because there's a lot of guilt and shame, and they look for spirituality, which is a path to uh, feeling like you're connected and peaceful and happy, right? So, how do you find the path that's right for you? So, this is what I just finished writing in my book. You have to sit down and earnestly look inside yourself, ask your soul, ask your heart, ask your gut, say, I want to know what path I should follow. What should I do? And then you need to listen. Okay. All the books, all the guests, all the movies, they're just pointers to you, and you have to go back inside you because spirituality will show up. It may not even get answered in that moment, but you'll be walking to the supermarket one day and someone will say something, you'll see something on a shelf, and it will be an awareness towards the answer, for the question. And spirituality is fluid. Sometimes it shows up as Jesus. I got a lot of right-wing Christians, praying for me, I'm going to pray for you, And I say, I don't think Christ is my savior because I think Christ is God, is everything. But I'll always take prayers, Sometimes it shows up as Buddha. Sometimes it shows up as us talking on this show. It shows up in many different ways. I was talking to a woman who's a psychologist recently, and she was following several different teachers. And I told her, stop. You're thinking too much. Get out of your head. So what happens is, I think the spiritual path for everybody is a process of learning and discovery, but you need to be into it. You really need to be into it. Like, there's not a night I go to sleep without looking at least a couple minutes at a YouTube video of Michael James explaining Ramana's teachings. There is no doubt in anybody's mind that I'm a continual spiritual searcher. I have a pretty good time with it. If you seek, you'll find. But people want answers now. They want to know the whole thing now.
Yeah, you have to like get into the flow, right? You
Yeah,
can't just
yeah. It's everything is that doing what it does. So spirituality does not have to come out of misery either. It can come out of complete joy. You can. I was watching. Sounds great. I was watching my little dachshund go to the bathroom this morning, and I thought, gee, what cute little hind legs you got. That's spirituality. That's looking at a created being of some sort that I really love. So it doesn't have to come from a negative or difficult place, but difficulty is also a way of spiritualism too. So it changes. I work with people who are Buddhists. I work with Christians. I work with an atheist. Doesn't believe in God. He loves nature, and I don't say, well, what do you think nature is? I don't go there. Why would I go there? He finds peace in that. He can sit by a river and find total utter peace. Call it whatever you want. What's the difference? That's spirituality, I think.
What about the importance of having the mindset? And now I'm not talking just spirituality, but when a when you're maybe wanting change or needing to have a difference in your life, or needing to overcome something maybe as horrible as cancer, or anything, any kind of struggle like that. uh Mindset, how is the importance of that? And it might relate to spirituality. I'm just
Well, yeah, everything is spirituality because everything is that one thing. Well, in the dream, mindset's really important. So I developed a bunch of tools that I use because, life is balanced: mentally, emotional, physical, and spiritual. So when one of those things get out of balance, you have to rebalance it. So if I'm too much in my head, I go for a hike. If I am feeling emotional about something, I may read something spiritually or journal, because everything is the mind. One of the problems that all of us have is fear. So what's fear? False evidence appearing real. Well, I'm afraid to talk to this guy because he's going to ask me really difficult questions. Well, I don't know what you're going to ask. How do I know what you're going to ask? I mean, I could watch all your shows in the world. I don't know what you're going to ask. So um, I just limit everything to the point of that everything comes and goes, and that when there's difficulty, I need to be mindfully aware that I'm caught up in something and I need to get out. Like when I was working on the book today, it was at the point where I needed to stop. So I did the dishes. The key is that you have to know that something's going on that's not right, and then just adjust it.
Yeah, you have to be able to pick up on it, be aware, self-aware of
Yeah.
of a situation or something that you need to change it up real quick. Or yeah, that's a good point. Now, I'm not so sure. I mean, maybe a lot of people are, but I think a lot of people probably do get into that kind of where they just get caught up with things in life, and they don't really do like self evaluations or self checks on the regular. And I feel like you probably need to do that daily, multiple times a day.
It's a good idea in the morning, midday, and in the evening. Also people have busy lives, but that gets into a whole nother subject of life purpose. You know, so if you want to go there, we can go there. But it's good to start. Yeah, it's good to. I start my day remembering to remember who I am and what my purpose is. My purpose is as a teacher and a writer and a musician. So I just do my purpose. I'm not the kind of guy that can get into a car, drive to a job I don't give a shit about, come home, make dinner, and then I'm out with popcorn watching Netflix. That's not a purpose-driven life. Does everybody need a purpose? No. My father never needed a purpose in his life. He thought all this was BS. He said, "Look, you work, and you're happy." That's it. And that was good for him. You have a purpose. Do you need to know what it is? Some people do, some people don't. The people listening to your show and who listen to me, we're aware that we have one and we want to know more about it because there's something inside us that's calling, which is the longing. Maybe my father wasn't that spiritually developed, or maybe he was very developed and I didn't know.
Where do you think that longing comes from? That's deep within us. I know. I mean, as soon as you said that, I know exactly. Like, I know how it feels. I know exactly what you're talking about. I can totally relate. Like, but where?
Well, here's what I was told. Here's what I was taught, and I'm still trying in a way to wrap my head around it. But we are God because we can't be separate from it. At times, I really truly get that. At times, it's like, how is that possible? Um, but it's within us. That I do know. How do I know that? Well, I know that as a songwriter, melodies and lyrics come to me from someplace. It ain't me, and it's not from a rhyming dictionary. So where does that come from? Same place everything else comes from. So whatever that is, I'm part of it. People who have had near-death experiences talk a lot about going, quote, home and feeling this unconditional love and that everything is right and everything is perfect and all that kind of stuff. And then they come back and they don't have any fear of anything. It's like, I absolutely know that I am part of that, or, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I will return.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. This is
yeah.
only a blip, apparently.
And that makes sense to me. That's funny that you talk about music in that way. I think there was somebody else I was listening to a podcast that was talking about that, and how it almost comes from like source itself when you're writing music, and that it's so fascinating.
Yeah, I have 50 record albums out. I don't know where all that music came from. I'm known as the dulcimer player, as one of the most innovative dulcimer players in the world, they say. If I were to try and teach myself what I do, I'd give up. I don't know how to do what I do. I just do it. A friend of mine says, "Well, can you write it out?" I say, "No, because I never do it the same way twice." "Well, how's it sound so good?" I have no idea. I cannot draw a straight line with a ruler. Okay, I cannot catch a football. But I can do all these other things. I can cook. That's good. So I don't know. Some people can put a basketball in the hoop from 6 states away. I don't know how that happens.
I love it. I love it. What are the type of clients that you kind of you bring on and that you help? Like these people, what are they looking for? What do they need? I mean, I'm sure you've got a bunch of different ones, but just give us an idea of some of the type of people that you're working with.
Well, they're mostly professionals. Some are doctors, clergy, business guys, all who feel stuck. Some are retired housewives who kids have left the nest. Some their husbands have died, and they've been so caught up in the story of mom and wife that they've lost who they were. So there's an author named Connie Zewig who wrote a book, I think it's Zewig, about the role of the soul. So we all have these roles that we play, and many people say, okay, well, when I retire, I will then blank, blank, blank. Well, that's your soul, So people get to be in their 70s, they have heart attacks and strokes, and what's the point of living your life in a role rather than with your soul? So what I do with my clients is the first thing I ask every client is, what don't you want anymore in your life? Not what do you want. I don't care what you want. What don't you want? Because that's the thing that you want to get rid of. A lot of my clients say, I want to be happy. And I say, well, what's happy to you? What makes you happy? They don't have a clue. Most people don't know what makes them happy because when it comes down to it, it's not a thing. You can't buy happiness, you know. I mean, I had a TV show or a record deal. I had over $1 million. I thought I had it, but happiness was nowhere to be found. Had a lot of zeros in my checkbook at the time, and a big zero in my heart. So,
That's
what is happiness? Happiness is that spiritual connection and that passion to do and to be that story that moves you,
yeah.
that you want to get up. So that's what I teach. And I teach a bunch of spirituality if they want it. Most of my clients are with me a year or more because it's an ongoing thing. They're like family, really. And I don't take a lot of clients. I only have a certain amount because I think about them throughout the week. It's not like, well, okay, I'll see you Thursday at 10 and I don't think about you till Thursday at 3:50, or 9:55.
That's funny that you mentioned happiness. I was just listening to a Buddhist podcast today that was talking about that, and they were saying how a lot of people are always looking forward to happiness. Like as soon as I get that new truck, or as soon as I can't wait to have kids and then I'll be happy, or I can't wait till the kids get old enough to move out and then I'll be happy, or you know, they're always looking ahead to be happy rather than perhaps living in the now and trying to be happy with the current. Like it's almost like they live their life and they never really experience happiness because they're always looking forward to you know when they're going to be happy.
Yes, if you love what you do and you do what you love, you're pretty happy, you know. But there are other things that help with happiness. One is love. So the first one you gotta love is you. You gotta like yourself. I have wonderful date nights. I'm the most romantic guy to me. I'm telling you, I know just what I like. No bitching, no complaining. It's a great date. The other thing is rest. You need to sleep. You need to get good rest, and you need to eat fairly well. Um, those things help you be happy, but happiness is a mental mind thing. So, in my book, I talk about riding the surfboard here in California. They're surfers. So at this one place called Sunset Cliffs, across the street from the cliffs, and the cliffs right below the cliffs is the ocean, and they're beautiful, beautiful cliffs. They're multi-million-dollar homes. I don't know, $4 or $5 million homes. And then there's the road, that people drive on, and then right against the sidewalk where the cliff is are a bunch of hippie vans that hippies park, and they open up the side door and they work on their laptops, and so it's like the millionaires and the hippies all in one place. But if you watch the surfers, it's all about balance. If you don't know how to balance on the surfboard, the waves, you can get killed. So there's great respect for the ocean with surfers. It's really like it's a cult almost, in a good way. So life is a balance. It's you have to know how to ride the surfboard because not every day you're happy. Not every day you got all your stuff together. There are times when things don't go your way, but you don't have to hang out there. Okay, when I was in
Right.
Kansas, when I got cancer, I was almost bankrupt. I mean, at that point, the music business had cracked open for everybody because of the internet. No one was buying music, they were downloading it. Okay, and on and on and on. So I was almost bankrupt, and I had no money to move to San Diego. I mean, San Diego, cost of living here compared to anywhere else, man. But that didn't stop me. The story was, are you going to die of cancer and are you going to remain broke, or do you want to change your story? Do you want to be happy? So in the movie The Shawshank Redemption, one of the lines of that movie that Tim Robbins says to Morgan Freeman is, you either get busy living or you get busy dying. So I envision, and this is one of the things that I teach my clients, is how you create your story. My story was move to California, get an apartment not far from the beach, with a laundry and with parking, which is a lot here, and do it for $1,000 a month, right? Which was like, I'm dreaming. Some people don't even rent rooms in their home for that, but I found it. It took me 2 weeks, and I created the story in my head. I watched it, and then I walked into it. And the trick to the secret in the sauce is that you have to live like it's already happened. I think Joe Dispenza talks about this. I'm not sure. I don't read a
Yes,
lot of
he does. He talks, especially with in regards to your health. You have to kind of envision that you're whole or healed already, and you kind of have to try to live that way.
yeah.
That things
The,
have,
yeah,
yeah.
a lot of the stuff that a lot of these guys talk about, I more or less in one way or another discovered on my own because I had to. I had to survive. So I just rejected, that that's bad story. Most people with cancer would have had their lymph nodes removed because the doctor said this is what you do. It's protocol. Hell no. I remember saying to her, "Well, but there's no signs of cancer on these tests." And she said, "Well, I'm sure it's in your system microscopically." And I said, "Well, then you might as well take everything out." I mean, what insanity? Really, what gall? That wasn't who I was going to be. I wasn't going to be that person, especially when there was no signs of cancer. So I created this thing. The same thing happened when I became a coach. I had no idea what a coach was. I looked on YouTube and watched a couple of these uh, life coaches, and I kind of got nauseous. I thought, what a scam. That's what I thought. And I thought, I can't do this. And then a friend of mine said, but you did it. You're like living, you literally did this thing from moving from almost poverty and death to this life you have. Why don't make another record album, man? You got enough of those. Teach what you do. And I'm thinking, huh. And then I had to figure out how would I do that. And then I began to put it together. Actually, I put it together right before COVID, and then just started to talk very honestly and genuinely with different people. There's no lack of people who are having problems, and it's a perspective that I teach, and with certain tools that really do work. And that's how I prefer to call myself a creative life designer, but personal coach is okay. That's all right.
I like that. So was that kind of maybe the turning point for you? Was that conversation with your friend to where when you decided, you know what, I'm going to go for this, or was there something else?
No, that was it, because that resonated. That like hit a bell in my head. It was like, wow. And along with the time when I stopped at the stoplight, and I thought, how did you survive a 70% chance of dying? And just the answer kind of came almost in an out of body experience. You survived to teach people what you know. Oddly enough, I've become more of a spiritual teacher than anything else, although I don't consider myself a guru or any. I mean, I'm just me. I walk my talk, but that's why I enjoy my life. That's why I enjoy writing this book and talking to people and seeing breakthroughs in my clients and aha moments.
Do you have a title for the book yet?
I was tentatively calling it The Longing, but that's not going to sell anything. So I'm just going to give it to my editor and have someone else come up with the title. Um,
What's do you have any kind of dates as far as publishing goes, or?
yeah, I'm hoping to have it out later this fall of maybe before my birthday, which is in December of 22. But what's cool about the book is um, after I got done writing a bunch of chapters, I thought, didn't you write a song similar to this chapter? And I went back and I found in my catalog a bunch of songs that related to each chapter. So when you buy the book, if there's an audio version, or even if it's just a cover book, a book you can hold in your hand, you can go to my website, kevinroth.org, and download the songs that go with the chapters.
Oh, that's cool. That's real cool, man. Yeah, I can dig that. As far as music's concerned, I mean, do you feel like there's healing and spiritual I'm assuming you do with music, and just talk to me, man. Talk.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, music is definitely healing. There's a song that Peter, Paul, and Mary sing called "Music Speaks Louder Than Words." It's the only thing the whole world listens to. You know, there's chanting, there's Gregorian chants. There are people who claim up and down that they've captured um, the heartbeats and the sounds of planets. For me, music is a healing process because it's like psychotherapy. When I write a song, I say what I can't say out loud somehow or another, but it comes out that way. When I play the dulcimer, I play in a very meditative style to myself, and I teach dulcimer meditation. So, and I sell dulcimers. I have a line of dulcimers for meditation. But the idea is that when you're playing the dulcimer and you're playing it quietly to yourself and you're not thinking about what you're doing or what you're playing, your mind is lullabied like a baby in a crib that's wailing, and the person turns on the little thing and the baby stops wailing. So the mind goes to the music, and then you can ask your inner self, your inner voice, what you should do. Because without it, or if I sit down with a piece of paper and say, okay, what should I be doing today? Stuff will come out, but never as deeply or as interestingly as when I do the Dulce meditation. And strangely enough, I don't like to meditate. I don't sit and meditate. It's not my thing. But playing dulcimer is my type of meditation.
Right. It kind of maybe, I don't know, removes a lot of the distractions around you and allows you to maybe go inward more. That's fascinating.
Yeah, and I'm always aware that what I'm playing isn't coming from me. I mean, even Bob Dylan talks about that. He doesn't write the songs. It comes from some place, something that we've talked about earlier, the consciousness or whatever. It's not us doing it. And the fact that these dulcimers, a lot of the ones that I have, are made by people I know. I mean, these were like trees that were cut down. they're like singing trees. They're beautiful instruments.
That's cool, man. What would you say to somebody or tell somebody who's maybe just struggling with, the things that life's thrown at them, and, they need some help somewhere, some kind of direction?
Well, first of all, I would say that there's help out there. So if you're struggling with an addiction or you're being abused, there's free professional help. There's also help online, though you need to be careful of it, because not everyone who makes a YouTube video is sane. But there are books, right? So you can. I love Wayne Dyer. I like Deepak Chopra. I like Oprah. Um, if you want to get more spiritual, I always recommend a book called it's by David Godman, and it's Be As You Are, about Ramana Maharshi's teachings. If you have the bucks, hire a professional coach, because what a coach does is we keep you accountable. And if you're going to pay money and you're going to show up every week, you will make progress faster. That's for sure. So those are three options, but you don't need to dwell in it. I have a saying, don't step in it. So if you see things that aren't the right things for you, don't step in them. I have a relative who calls me quite often, and when I see their name pop up on my phone, I don't answer it. Eventually I get back to it, but I know they've got an agenda that I don't want to hear. They're passive aggressive, and this is who they are, and I'm not into fixing them. I just don't want to. Pre-cancer, I would get into their whole story, their whole drama. I love being the victim. I love the victim role. I don't like the victim role at all. There's no way it's around me anymore. I'll tell you a funny story. My skin was itching a lot, so I went in to see a dermatologist here. It wasn't my normal one because he was on vacation, and the guy started to name all of these things that were possibly wrong with my liver and my this and my that. And I looked at him, And I said to him, "You know what, dude? I'm just going to go buy some Jergens lotion. If there's a problem, I'll come back." And it stopped. He was like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, "You could have eczema, you could have this. I could have anything, dude. I'm going to go for the Jergens lotion. I'm sorry." And of course, it went away. Actually, what happened is I changed the soap I was using.
The crazy thing about that is, though, I mean, if he was talking to somebody different, I mean, they could that could be overwhelming or burdensome to somebody. You know, you start throwing all these things at them, like, well, it could be this, it could be that. You know, get people worked
Yeah.
up.
Well, when you go through what I went through with the cancer thing for a year, you try to avoid anything that seems like it's going to be back into the movie of the drama. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You talk about being stuck a lot, and I mean, I think I kind of know, but maybe can you, you talk about helping people get unstuck. Can you maybe define stuck for me? What is a person being stuck?
Stuck is when you don't feel good in your own skin, and you don't know how to get out of a feeling that's not comfortable because you don't have clarity. There's ambivalence. There's fear. Um, it's all a mind thing. It's just your mind. And when you remember that that's all it is, you can, one of the examples I use is, imagine that you come home from work and you're really pissed off at someone from work, and you're ready to kill them, right? And the phone rings and you pick it up and it's a friend you haven't heard from in a really long time. And they say, "Hey man, what's going on?" You start talking about it, right? What happened to this like huge event that was ruining your life a minute ago? Where did it go? Now you're talking to your friend about catching a beer on the weekend. You're happy. So, what exists and what doesn't exist? I had a client who complained about her boss driving her nuts and she wanted to quit her job. And I said, how often do you actually talk to your boss in a week? And it was like 15, 20 minutes every Monday morning and maybe 5 or 10 at Friday. And I said, okay, so you're talking 30 minutes. It's over Zoom because you're working from home. Why are you carrying her the entire week? Well, I just feel really stuck. She's always on me. I said, she's not always on you. She's not there. You think she is, but she's not there. And she got it, and she was way happier. So you have to recognize what it is. Recognizing it isn't enough, though. I do have to tell you, you have to feel it. So if I tell you, don't put your finger in the fire, you're going to get burned, you may understand it, but until you put your finger in the fire, and you will never do that again. That's what you need to experience. It doesn't always have to be that tragic, but it could be something as wonderful as well, like this weekend, I was going to have someone over for dinner, and I just thought, you know what? I think I'd rather just be alone because I don't want to hear any drama from this particular person. And so I know enough through mindful awareness to know what I need and to not be stuck in a situation with someone who's going through a lot of stuff, who I'm happy to help because they're a friend, but I just didn't want to step in it that night. So I made a great meal. I listened to some Billie Holiday, watched some Netflix, and it was great.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I think that's good advice. I think that's, a lot of people should potentially, try to live their life that way, or if not all people. Yeah, I think that's wonderful. Um, well, it's been a fascinating discussion. Don't really want to take too much more of your time. I guess last question for you, where can the listeners check you out, find your work, get a hold of you if they need to get a hold of you?
Well, there's an online course I have for those who can't afford coaching. It's called Kevin Roth. It's at teachable.com, How to Create a Life You Love. And you can also go to my website, kevinroth.org, and I do a free 30-minute Zoom consultation with you to see if we're a match for coaching. And there's also a free stress buster. I think it's like 5 minutes breathing technique that you can get by going to my website, just kevinroth.org. Yeah. And check out my YouTube channel if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll put the links in the description. Uh, Obviously, great conversation. I'd love to have you back on maybe when you drop the book. Maybe
Oh,
I can
great.
read the book and then we can talk about your book. That would be awesome.
Okay. Sounds
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Thanks for taking the time to do this tonight.
Well, thanks for having me.